Luke Kornet is back on the floor. What should that mean for the Celtics starting lineup? And Danilo Gallinari speaks, and he really wants to play. And unfortunately, I got bad news for you, Danilo. I'm going to tell it to you all right now with Tom Westerholm on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, Keith John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day, Monday through Friday. I've got a free, fresh podcast for you daily, so check it out. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It's also on YouTube. I appreciate you subscribing there, making this show your first listen every day and part of your daily routine. I'm John Karalis, former professional basketball player, now credentialed beat writer covering the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've also written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. Today, we're getting into the big men. One of them, who is out with an ACL injury, Danilo Gallinari, spoke for the first time since his injury, since his surgery. So we'll discuss him. And Luke Kornet is back on the floor, which now opens up a discussion about what the Celtics are going to do on Friday for their game and for opening night. And to talk about that, with me is Tom Westerholm. Tom, how you doing, buddy?
Let me do the intro sometime. I want to do a super cool lockdown intro sometime.
Okay, go ahead. Hit me with one.
No, I don't. I'm not ready. You're not ready.
You're not ready for that?
No.
Demand to be put on the. You demand the job, and then you're not ready.
I'm like, give me the ball. I wasn't ready.
No. Yeah, I'm open. No. Pass. Take it back.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Celtics podcast network. I got it. I don't got it.
Don't have it. No. That's all right. Well, so
I retract. I'll stay in my facilitator role. I wasn't ready for the big moment.
Sometimes the you try to play beyond your role.
Yeah.
And you try to do a little too much.
I just feel like if I started doing it, I would accidentally say a competing network and then introduce Nicole Yang and be like, well,
yeah. See, that's the thing. You know,
so
it's like you got traded over here and then you're going to show up with the other team's practice jersey.
Yeah.
On
I go to the wrong locker room. And
yeah. Well, until that happens. Yeah. Let's talk about Luke Kornet and the start, bit more so the starting lineup. That seems to be the topic that everybody wants to touch on now because Luke's coming back and there's one more game in the preseason and this is the ramp up game. Most of the guys got their day off last Friday against the G League Charlotte Hornets. Now the rest of the
that team sucks.
They are quite bad and getting worse because LaMelo is out for a while, so at least a couple of weeks. So that's welcome to the Wembanyama sweepstakes in Charlotte. But now the Celtics, so they play on Friday, they have Saturday off. Now Sunday they're starting their ramp up, and it's a weird week. It's a weird schedule for and it's not much. We're almost like in off-season mode. On in coverage wise, and the we were talking about this before we started. We're like, okay, there's you go to practice and there's here's Sam Hauser again. Okay, well, Sam hasn't done anything in 4 days. Sam, how you feeling out there? So anyway,
feeling like a shooter. You look like a shooter.
You look like that dude. That video that I tweeted out, man, he's just out there. Most NBA players can just, when you put them in a catch and shoot situation in a little drill, most NBA players will be able to hit. But man, that dude just is on another level.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's going to be ultimately, and if he's going to be able to play defense well enough. And we'll talk about more Sam Hauser later. But man, when he gets that just catch and shoot, and he's got a clean look, whew, that thing is pretty.
That is pretty.
It is quite. But Luke Kornet is hoping to also display a little bit of a jumper, a little bit of a 3-point threat, maybe not quite as purdy as Sam Hauser, but somewhat reasonable 3-point shooting. I assume he's going to play on Friday. Joe Mazzulla is playing it all coy, and he's like, oh yeah, we're going to see. I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to look at it and see. Like, come on, man. Just come on. This is the one thing that I miss. I miss the honesty. Like, yes, we're just gonna play this guy. We're playing him on Friday, and who cares if the other coach knows? It's a preseason game. Excuse me. So I assume Luke Kornet's going to play with the starters. We're going to get our first sense. And the question is, do you go into the beginning of the season with Luke Kornet and Al Horford as your starters, or do you go in the way you've started the first couple of games with Derek White and Al Horford, single big type of thing? What do you think off the top of your head?
Top of my head, the first game of the season is against the Philadelphia 76ers. So throw Luke Kornet out there, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need Al Horford taking all those hits, taking all that damage, losing all that XP in the first game of the season. Like, kind of think of, I think if you're thinking about Al Horford this season, right, kind of think of him in that sort of 2K mode where, like, you go through a game and, like, you play in 2K, like, when you sit down on the bench, you'll rest up a little bit, you'll heal up a little bit, but you're never getting back to 100% energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like kind of take that tact with Al Horford this season. Just kind of like, you can play him, and and he'll be very useful. But just remember that when the playoffs come around, you want to be as close to 100% as possible, and know that you're taking away from it a little bit the more times you're throwing him out against Embiid during the regular season. Have Luke Kornet go out there, do what he can. I mean, Kornet is very tall. Like, I think people kind of forget that he is like, he's
quite tall.
And like Embiid obviously is tall and enormous and, super talented and all this stuff. But I mean, look, like, Kornet can at least, I think he's pretty close to matching him height wise, right? Like, he's very, he's way up taller. Yeah, he might be. So, give him a shot, put him out there. And look, if it goes well, problem solved, right? Because like, you probably want to go double big when Rob Williams comes back. If it goes well against the Sixers, you can just run it back the next day and have every reason in the world to just kind of keep things going. So yeah, to me, I think it does make a lot of sense to keep Kornet in there. Just kind of keep the rotations roughly what you would want them to be when Rob comes back. And again, if the Kornet experiment is going really well, then that's just more depth. Then you just have a better sense of who your backup center is going to be when you've got two big men in the game, down the line. So yeah, if it's me, I'm definitely starting Kornet, giving that a look. And, again, worst case scenario, you pull him out halfway through the game. Like, is that like, the nice thing about if a starting lineup doesn't work, that is like, every coach ever is like, it doesn't really matter the starters, we'll bring other people back in. The good news about that is like if the starting lineup doesn't work, you have the whole rest of the game to make up for the starting lineup not working. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's correct. And I do like, first of all, everything about this preseason has been about consistency, about taking what worked last year and carrying as much of it over as you can while fixing some of the things that went wrong or that you could do better. Going double big is something that I think the Celtics like to do, and Joe Mazzulla saw how it went last year and says, I think if he's really honest about being as consistent as possible, you give double big a shot and say Al Horford as your 4, Al Horford as your guy defending the post, with Luke Kornet just sort of roaming a little bit. Or maybe you go the other way and you say, let's give Al Horford a chance to roam a little bit. But either way, I think I think Luke Kornet's size, and Luke Kornet is also a more athletic than people realize. He's an athletic guy.
Yeah.
So if you look up his scrum from,
I think it's his hairstyle. I think that's what tricks people.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He looks like an accountant.
Yeah.
He looks like an accountant. He looks like the accountant from The Good Place.
Yes, he does.
Who's also a taller than normal guy.
The last piece of corner cake. Yeah. No,
not the Book of Doug's. So yeah, the corner piece. So if you look up the scrum, the video of him talking to the media and how much taller he is in the media, I will also point out that he didn't have shoes on in that scrum. So he's even a little bit taller in shoes on the floor. That's how big he really is. I think it makes sense to give that a shot. And let's see. Why not see if you can duplicate it? And if you, the listener, are sitting there saying, John, there's no way. Are you expecting him to do what Robert Williams does? No, of course not. But how close can he get in that role, doing some of the things, not all of the things? That's the important part. How can he duplicate enough? Can he resemble enough? It's like, Sweet and Low or some artificial sweetener. It's not sugar. It's not as good as the other stuff. But is it good enough? Yeah. Is it going to leave a little bit of a bitter taste in your mouth after the game? Maybe. But also, it's good enough to get the job done. So that's why I think Luke Kornet in that role will be helpful. I'm going to let you respond, Tom, in just a second. First, I got to tell people about PrizePicks, which is daily fantasy in the easiest way possible because it's not against other people. It's you against the projections. And it's better than a lot of the other daily fantasy options out there, not only because you can get a 100% match on your deposit up to $100. That's a nice little thing. But you just pick against the over-unders. You pick 2 to 5 players. So if I want to go out and take Jayson Tatum, or in this game, on this night, Paolo Banchero, and I want to say I'm going to take the over-under on points there. I know he's been playing well. So I might win that bet. Or John Morant's playing, so I'm going to take the over on John Morant points. Or you can cross over into other sports. You have other options there. 2 to 5 players, and you can win up to 10 times your money. You got projections on any sport that you watch. I can't list all of them, but all the major pro sports in North America, college major sports, esports, NASCAR, tennis, they have disc golf, they have European basketball, they have cricket, anything, literally anything that you can ask for. If it's playing competitively, it's probably on PrizePicks, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. So it's super, super easy. Plus safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. Locked On is the promo code. Deposit $100, get $100. Deposit $50, PrizePicks gives you $50. Don't forget to enter that promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100. That's at prizepicks.com or download the PrizePicks app. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. How about making Locked On NBA your second listen? I will be hosting the Wednesday show with Jake Madison. We'll be talking about certainly Banchero and his debut in Orlando and LaMelo Ball. All that stuff's going to be discussed. Haven't recorded it yet, but I will be. So check it out wherever you get your podcast. Watch the show on YouTube. So before we took that little break, I was making my point about Luke Kornet and keeping the consistency. And I cut Tom off before he could respond. Tom, go.
Okay. The point I was just going to make was, you brought up like the kind of the replacement level of Rob Williams and like Luke Kornet is not going to do all the stuff that Rob Williams does. And that's all 100% true. The point I was just going to make was like, that said, like the two things that Luke Kornet like should theoretically be able to do is protect the rim and pass. And It's like, well, it's two things that Rob Williams can also do. And so I think then Being able to bring those two things, being able to kind of move the ball, set screens, all the stuff that, that those two guys can both do. And then, maybe Kornet isn't quite the deterrent that Rob Williams is, but he's taller. He's probably, people aren't going to want to try to shoot over him. Like, that's not going to be their first choice at the very least. So, yeah, I think, Kornet offers kind of like I don't want to call it a budget version of what Rob Williams does, because I feel like that's more Kevin Gelly, but, he kind of does he does offer a couple of the things. And then the other nice thing that you get is a look at the elements of Kornet's game that Rob Williams doesn't have. You get like a longer extended look while Rob's out. So, maybe Kornet does space the floor. Maybe that does kind of open things up a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, like maybe he's so tall that he's got a small amount of like a post game, out of the pick and roll or something like that. Whatever you want to do. You also have that advantage as well. So, yeah, I was just going to say that there are small things that Rob and Luke Kornet share. And
the best point about all of this is, if I'm wrong, I sit here and I think Luke can go catch an alley-oop. There's nothing, he's caught alley-oops before.
Yeah, totally.
All you got to do is throw him at a more reasonable height, right? Like that's your adjustment. Don't throw him at Rob Williams' height. Throw him a little like normal height. But he can go get those. He can block some shots. I think he can do enough to get the job done and hold his own. And honestly, when I look at this team, him holding his own with Tatum and Brown and Horford and Smart, okay, even if you're just matching in the first quarter and going, 25-24 or whatever, I really have bought into these second quarter lineups and thinking you not only throw Brogdon and White or Hauser, Grant Williams. That's been the trio. Now you also throw in Jaylen Brown and either and maybe one of your other your third bigs. Maybe you go with Blake Griffin or something. Maybe you go like that and just go small. But whatever it is, I like the idea of Brogdon coming in and being the quarterback of that second unit. And I think keeping that rotation and having like Derek White kind of bridge the gap, and maybe he's out there in that lineup too. That lineup, I just love the idea of Celtics second units. All of a sudden, I love the Celtics second units, and I think starting big and just keeping it together, keeping it close against these great teams, other great teams. You give that second unit a chance to go out there and do what they do. Maybe that's how they build their leads. And then the Celtics can see if Tatum finds his rhythm in the second half or something like that. So, but if it doesn't work, you can just say, okay, Luke, it's not working. You start Derek White, you start another way, and you go a different route, and you try to mix and match, and probably most likely against the I don't know who they play next after Orlando. I mean after Philly, but I should probably just call that up. Let me simply type in two letters because it goes directly to the Celtics schedule on my
Celtics.com/schedule. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I type CE into my board and it goes automatically to the Celtics schedule. And I can see, oh yeah, that's the Miami Orlando back-to-back. So you go against Bam Adebayo, and it's maybe you go a little bit different. Maybe you go a different route against the more athletic guy versus the bruising big man in Joel Embiid. So the Celtics, with the depth that they have, if they keep Noah Vonleh and they really maximize their depth, they can go different routes. Maybe some days Luke Kornet doesn't play, and maybe some days he gets 30 minutes, and you just mix and match with whatever's working that night.
Yep. No, for sure. And I think your point about the second units is great too, because if you look at the way that a lot of these that some of these preseason games have gone. First quarter's been closer, and then the Celtics just kind of keep hitting you, and they keep pulling away from you because like they're very skilled. There was that article a couple of days ago that was like, the Celtics only have like X number of good players, and that was mystifying to me because if you kind of look down their depth chart, it's like this team has a lot of good players. Like and then a lot of good combinations of them. Like
what article was saying that they only have?
I believe it was a Hollinger column about how like the Celtics like didn't like they kind of stopped doing moves at a certain point during the summer, which I mean was technically true, but just did not. I did not agree with that take. I feel like the Celtics have a lot of good players, and again, you kind of go up and down the depth chart. I mean, look, like you get into that second unit, and I mean they're throwing Grant Williams out there as the 8th man. Like Sam Hauser 9, whatever it is. Like there's some players that are coming in off the Celtics bench, and guys who could start for a lot of teams, and guys who are going to rip up second units. So yeah, I mean. Get to that second quarter, see what happens, because you're going to be able to stagger Jaylen and Jayson. And honestly, one of the things Mazzulla has been doing during the preseason that I think is really interesting is he's tried a few lineups with both of those guys off the floor and Brogdon in, and those lineups have done pretty well. Like, there's a lot of looks that they can throw out there. So I don't know. I think I agree with you. I think that second unit could be a real killer.
Anything you can do to prevent Brogdon from being forced into the starting lineup. I actually, it's a reversal from me because I thought I would have put money a month ago on Malcolm Brogdon being a contender for 6th man of the year, but not qualifying because he started too many games. Because I thought at the beginning when he first came in, I thought, okay, if Jaylen needs to sit, you start Malcolm Brogdon. If Jayson needs to sit, you start Malcolm Brogdon. And it might still be the case. It might. But maybe you go with Derek White the way Mazzulla has been, and you say, because Malcolm Brogdon is so important in this particular role, it's more important to keep him coming off the bench and starting that second quarter. You like the idea of starting a second and a fourth quarter with a guy like Brogdon in charge, who was just a number one option on an NBA team.
Right.
And maybe he does go with Jaylen and Jayson on the bench to start these fourth quarters and second quarters. And you bring Jaylen in at the 10-minute mark and you let him get a little extra rest around the quarter break. And then you bring Jayson in at the 8-minute mark and let them just ride it out towards the end, a little bit more rested. I like that idea. I like that idea a whole lot more than putting Brogdon in the starting lineup. And that's always because I would rather take the lesser skilled guy and put him around the better players than take a really good player and put him in with the other good players. I'd rather take the really good player in Brogdon and just keep him aside and say he's good enough to break a defense down on his own. You don't need to put him out there with Tatum and Brown. But you put Luke Kornet out there, he's not good enough to do that stuff. Or you put a lesser skilled guy out there and you say, why are you starting him against rather than a better player? Because those guys will make this guy better if he just knows how to play his particular role. I believe in that concept, and just put Brogdon on that second unit and let him do the breaking down and just keep everything else as much the same as possible. Let the good players make the lesser player better or the less talented player better. So however they do it, however they need to do it over the course of whoever sits and how, with the only caveat being if 2 or 3 guys are out, you have no choice. Just roll with what you got to roll with. But if you can keep Brogdon on that second unit, then do it.
Yep, because not for nothing, that second unit this season, the Celtics have so much more floor spacing. Like just the presence of Hauser, Grant Williams continuing to take a step up. I mean, like this is a group that can really space the floor for him. So, that's not necessarily like not. I don't think this would have helped somebody like Dennis Schroeder much, but he also, like the spacing just wasn't the same last year when he was out there. Like it's like not only is the player a lot better, the situation is a lot better too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
But
amazing that
also the player is way freaking better.
yeah, the player is a lot better. And the spacing is still great, even without Danilo Gallinari, who was supposed to be the floor spacer with that second unit. And when he went down, it was, oh, geez, well, we think Sam Hauser can do the job. Still not convinced, obviously, that Sam Hauser can do the job because he's only done the job in a couple of preseason games. And it looks very translatable, but I think history has taught me in particular, preseason results don't necessarily mean regular season results. Because I remember on this podcast, if you go back far enough, I was making some really wild arguments for like David Lee sitting here with as much conviction as I'm talking with now, saying you can run the offense through Lee in the high post, and he's a good enough passer, and he showed enough, and blah 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 blah, and then he was god awful. However, now that was a guy where I was expecting to do a lot,
right?
And Hauser, I'm expecting to simply catch and shoot for the most part, and just not screw up on defense. But the fact that Hauser is presenting himself as a viable option almost makes you forget that Gallinari was part of the team and hurt, which was when he came out on Tuesday to talk. It was like, oh yeah, Gallinari, how are you doing, bud? How's that ACL treating you? I will say that he obviously good spirits. He's taking literal steps forward because he's actually able to start walking on his own without assistance. And pretty soon they'll allow him to get on the floor and shoot a free throw. But
crazy that he can't do that.
It is crazy. It is crazy that he can't just go out there and just stand still and shoot. But it was interesting to hear from him because he wants to play. He wants to play so bad. He really wants to play for the Celtics. And we're all sitting there going like, Sam Hauser, what a revelation. I've already written a big story on him. Other people have written big stories on him. There's a lot of focus on him. And everybody's like, yeah, Gallo, good luck with that, man. Hopefully you're feeling better. Sam, how you doing, buddy? It's an interesting dynamic now.
I mean, the thing that everybody was so excited about with Gallo was just that the Celtics had a consistent three-point shooter and just that bigger wing who can shoot that they've been looking for a long time. They like everybody, myself especially included, thought that they had with Aaron Nesmith, right? Like everybody expected him to be that guy. They've been looking for this guy, this floor spacing guy who can play around Jayson and Jaylen and just open up and then it turns out the guy was on the roster. The guy's been around. Like Sam Hauser is fully, capable of knocking down shots, and honestly is probably a better spot up 3-point shooter than Danilo Gallinari. So it is very awkward. I mean, he kind of didn't rule out a return today, which was interesting. I mean, like ACL guys do seem to come back from ACLs a little bit quicker than you, like I guess in previous years than you would have expected. It's possible. And if he does, then I think the nice thing for the Celtics is like it's not like it's going to be that hard to plug him in for minutes, right? Like you can if you just want him out there to shoot, sure, yeah, absolutely. Like you can never have too many guys who can just like knock down spot up 3-point shooters. That's an easy fit. But yeah, I mean, like Hauser's the much more interesting player, right? Like it's just like from a narrative perspective, from a team building perspective, like Gallo was a hired gun. Sam Hauser can be a guy who is with the organization for a while and can, just kind of be a very productive, big shooter, younger guy, all that stuff. Like he's just, from a franchise perspective, the Sam Hauser narrative, the Sam Hauser fit is just kind of more interesting and more long-term impactful than the Gallo one would be. And I think that's kind of where some of the cognitive dissonance comes from because getting Gallinari was a big deal for the Celtics this summer. Like, they put him on stage next to Malcolm Brogdon and said, all right, you guys go up there and be our big free agent acquisitions of the offseason. And, you know, it was like, that was kind of how it was trying to be sold. But, like, sorry, guys, like, Sam Hauser's like, I don't know, he's like, it's a little more interesting. Like, he's just, you know, he's younger. He looks a little better. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah. I mean, also, Gallinari has, you know, at 30, what is he, 35, 34, a two-year, $12+ million contract. Sam Hauser has a 3-year deal that's worth less than what Gallinari is making this year alone. 3 years, $5.6+ million. And it's not all guaranteed either. So, it's the sad thing is, and I do find this sad, is that Gallinari very clearly wants to play. He wants to play in Boston. He wants to help the Celtics win. He's talked about how much he liked the Celtics when he was growing up. He's a Larry Bird fan. And on an emotional level, you want to say, like, oh man, I'm rooting for this guy to make this comeback, and maybe he can be ready for the playoffs, and maybe there's a way for him to get out there and make a big shot and have an impact somewhere in some series. And then reality sets in and you say, what really makes more sense is to use his salary, which is a little more than $6 million, and attach it to maybe another player's salary or a traded player exception, and you somehow, however you need to do it, you can't combine those two things. But
I was just gonna say,
yeah. But I'm saying, I was trying to say, like, get somebody in with a traded player exception, and then somehow trade to Gallinari separately to whatever. But anyway, it just makes more sense to trade Gallinari and bring in a player. And if you trade Gallinari, you know, you can do any sort of combination here. If Derek White, we talked about this, if Derek White somehow gets redundant and you can get away with that, then now you have the mechanism to get a really good player who might shake free. It's wild that this whole Victor Wembanyama thing has hit now, because obviously the Celtics aren't in a position to tank and get him, but they are in a position to maybe get a player that's good, that a team that's in the middle says, look, this guy is too good for us because he's helping us win a little too much. Kind of like Horford in OKC.
Yep.
We'll take scraps. Just throw us a couple of picks or something. We'll take scraps. We'll take less than what normally it would take to get this deal done, just to get this up. Yes, Gallinari, fine, sure. We'll eat that money. That makes us worse. Thank you. Take this good player. That's where the Celtics could benefit from this Wembanyama hype, and it's just it makes more sense to keep that option open. That's why, just like we said in the last podcast we did together, that's why you don't extend Grant Williams, because maybe Grant Williams is somebody that greases the skids on a deal like that, and it depends on who that player is. But this can be a potentially really wild trade deadline.
Yeah. A really wild trade deadline for a number of reasons, like a really impactful one, because I think the thing that kind of gets me about this race to the bottom for Wembanyama, it's certainly not that he's not worth it. You watch that kid and you're like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I get going for that guy. But if there's 13, 14 teams that, like, you know they're not going to make the playoffs and are just like, screw it, like let's throw everything into the mix for this guy, that means there's going to be one team that's super happy. That means that there's going to be a second team that's like pretty happy because Scoot Henderson is really good. Yeah. And there's some like other solid talent toward the top of the draft. But what that means is that there's a lot of teams hitting the reset button all at the same time in pursuit of this one guy. And most of those teams aren't going to get him. So like, that's a lot of teams resetting for a target that isn't necessarily going to be there for him. It's a very odd dynamic because, I mean, there's going to be the teams that can really load up. And then I don't know what happens then. Like what happens next season or the season after when there is no, like there is no 7'4" guy, hitting guys with like crossover, step back, 3-point, hezzy, pull up, whatever. Like, what happens when that guy's not available and your team, put all its chips in that basket? I don't know, man. I think there's gonna be a lot of teams that are gonna find themselves in a pretty tough situation. But the Celtics are not one of them. The Celtics could really benefit this season from that race to the bottom. And I think I think that you're right. I think like a piece like Gallo and some future protected pick, whatever. Or I mean, if you want to do a bigger deal and somebody else is shaken free, absolutely. Like I think there's a lot of stuff that could really work in the Celtics' favor on that regard. And then a lot of really weird, chaotic stuff happening over the next like 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. Throw in the new TV deal, new collective bargaining agreement. Oh my God. This is like, tectonic plates. Shit.
Right. We haven't seen anything like this. Like this is new. Yeah.
This is the confluence of events that are happening right now.
Yeah.
With a generational talent, incredible amounts of money coming in, and a new collective bargaining agreement. And frankly, a league that's in tremendous shape with parity everywhere. And I don't know, it's a lot of things. Like you said, a lot of things are happening. And I don't know how this happened, how this finishes, but you're right. The next few years are going to be outrageous. Some really wild things are going to happen. And we're just going to be like, what? They what?
Yeah.
We'll see.
I do have one prediction though.
Okay.
The Kings are still going to stink.
Oh.
I had to do it. I don't know why. I was just feeling punchy. I was like, this is too much positivity. I had to take a swing at somebody.
Poor Sacramento catching a stray out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Well, and notice one thing. I didn't disagree with you. Thanks, Tom.
Appreciate you.
Hope you guys enjoyed that show. It was a fun show to do. Always fun to get together. The _ boys. I hope you've enjoyed the show enough. If you're still listening and you haven't subscribed, to hit that subscribe button. Mash that subscribe button. Not that you need to hit it with any more force than usual. Just clicking it is fine. Hitting it harder doesn't mean like a super subscribe. But still, tell me that you were vehement about the subscribing. Also on YouTube, you can hit the YouTube subscribe, the bell, like the videos. Really, if you're subscribed, just like the videos and comment on the videos. I love the people who are just there for feeding the algorithm. Thank you. I love it. Keep doing that. Anything you can do to be part of it, I appreciate that. And share the podcast. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Tell everybody. They should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.